Howdy y'all, the name's Brad, and this right here is Watch Rate Heart, and it is Friday, and by my recollection, that means it's time for the watch list. If I didn't know any better, this is where I discuss some stories I have watched and my feelings about them. And if you haven't guessed by my chosen vernacular, this week I'm watching some good old Western. We have some that have been called the best out there, and one from about 30 years ago. So what are you waiting for, partner? Let's get the show on the road and let's ride!
By the memory of a song, while the rolling Rio Bravo rolls along.
Now let's load up our cinematic rifle for the first film to review, and that's Rio Bravo, starring John Wayne, Dean Martin, Ricky Nelson, and Angie Dickinson. Directed by Howard Hawks. Letterboxd users has this at a 4.2 out of 5. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 96% fresh, and it is tied 101 with The House is Black and Vagabond in Sight and Sound's top 250 greatest films of all time list. This film pretty much gets every moment right, whether it's dramatic or whether it's thrilling or whether it's comedic, and it gets the tone exactly right. This is something that is very hard to do in a lot of movies. It seems like whenever the film wants to do something funny, it nails it. Whenever it wants to do something romantic, it nails it. When it ever does something dramatic, it nails it. And this film just nails almost everything in this film in the right tone. And I think that's an incredible job by Howard Hawks on that. I also think the film has great performances. I like John Wayne in this film quite a bit, but I really like Dean Martin as dude in this film. He plays a very good drunk, but he's also very sympathetic throughout the film too, which I was kind of surprised by. I don't remember hearing Dean Martin being a really good actor, but he pulls this off rather well. And there are some really well shot scenes in this movie, especially the final gunfight in the film. I also really like the colors of the film and just the way the jail and the bars and the outside is shot. It's just incredibly well done. I really like the look of the film too. I do have one minor issue, and I just think that the Angie Dickinson, John Wayne romance seemed kind of forced. But even so, I thought it was still kind of cute. I think some of it was kind of funny as well. Now, am I nitpicking a little? Yeah. Oh, I'm definitely nitpicking. But there were times where I was like, are they going to get more into this? And they really didn't. But it was cute for what it was. It was enjoyable for what it was. So it's just not as good as the rest of the film, but it's not bad. It just feels somewhat forced on that. As for a rating, it's getting a 4.5 out of 5 and a heart from me on this one. I think this was a great movie, very entertaining. I really have to say that getting each moment right, whether it's the dramatic, the comedic parts, the romantic parts, I think it is the thing that really surprised me in this film. There's not one scene in Rio Bravo where I was going, that's kind of bad. None of it's bad. The only issue I had is the romance was a little bit forced, but it was still cute. It was still nice for what it was and that. But great movie. Loved it. Really liked Dean Martin and John Wayne's performances as well. And the look of the film as well was really good. So 4.5 out of 5 for me for Rio Bravo. All right. And with every review that we do, we also discuss what the Letterboxd community thinks about this film. So let's go with Felicia Maroney. She gives it 3.5 stars out of 5. And Felicia says, honestly, the song sequence was my favorite part of this film. Dean Martin was truly great, and Angie Dickinson's permanent smirk was so endearing, and I loved every single moment she was on screen. This was way too long and dragged, otherwise I love the story, and I didn't even hate John Wayne in this. There is a lot to like in this film. I thought Angie Dickinson was good. I will say this, I didn't think this film was that long at all. I mean, how long is it? Oh, it's 2.5 hours. Wow. I didn't realize that. To me, it just kind of flew by, but I don't disagree with anything that Felicia is saying here, but except for like the rating. I think the film is a much better film, but she liked it, so that's good. Also, I did find it kind of interesting that they had to put a song sequence in this film with Dean Martin, but it was a nice song as well. Let's get into the second review. This is from Professor Dorkman. Professor Dorkman gives it 4.5 stars out of 5 with a heart. The hallmark of the film is Dean Martin's performance. He gives his all in being an actor. This is a Western with stakes and an audience can be invested in. This is often compared with High Note, and that they are both halves of the same coin, and it's a nice mix of suspense, humor, and romance, which I absolutely agree. The mix of this film is just so well done. That's another thing I didn't point out in my review. Just the mix of everything just mixed incredibly well. I'd have to agree with Professor Dorkman on that. And finally, we have Matlud here. He gives it 4.5 stars out of 5, and he says, it's long but good. It hits a higher gear in the last third when things start really paying off, and somehow the energy is a little looser and more fun. The casting is great, the writing is great, and though it's long, it's nonetheless efficient. I really didn't feel the length at all in this film, but moving forward, Hawks has a canny sense of what satisfies an audience. Yes, absolutely. His best films are eminently entertaining genre pictures that manage to lift up their best qualities. John Wayne is playing John Wayne here, but somehow is a better John Wayne. I can agree with that. Stumpy is a character that feels like he's in every Western, but when you watch another Western after Rio Bravo, you realize he's only really in this one. Many Westerns have character songs, but the one has Dean Martin. It's just so many things done better than usual. Really excellent. I haven't seen a lot of Westerns, but I do have to agree, this movie does a lot of things better than I think most Westerns do, and I think it's just the pure entertainment value of the film. It's not as serious as some of them are, but it's still a great time. It's a great movie to watch.
What are we going to do with this one, Frank?
Now that you've called me by name.
Let's put another round in the chamber with Once Upon a Time in the West, Sergio Leone's landmark film starring Henry Fonda, Charles Brosnan, Jason Robards, and Claudia Cardinal. It has a Letterboxd score of 4.4 out of 5, very high, which makes it number 68 in Letterboxd's top 250 narrative films. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 96% fresh, and it's tied 95th with Get Out, Tropical Malady, Black Girl, The General, and A Man Escaped on Sight and Sound's top 250 greatest films of all time list. And man, I have to say, this film is a masterpiece in the truest sense of the word. I really have to dig to find something wrong with the film. The visuals of this film, stunning. From close-ups to vistas to locations to color, everything about the film is just masterfully done. Everything is beautiful in this film. And it has a sprawling, twisty narrative that really had me interested from frame one. A story that was very compelling. And this has one of the best scores in a film ever. I'm also considering that with Ennio Morricone's other films that he's done, like Good and the Bad and the Ugly, which had a fantastic score. This is one of the best I have ever heard. An amazing score. As far as performances, all four of the main actors play their parts really well. Starting with Charles Brosnan, he does a very good job playing this quiet, stoic, only speaks when it's necessary type of person. I thought that was very good. I think Robards is also very good as kind of a comic relief, but kind of not really. Just maybe an unserious kind of person is how I look at it. He's very good in it. I also liked Claudia Cardinale in this. I think she played a very good damsel in distress. I think she was really good in this film as well. But man, Henry Fonda is so good as Frank, as the villain. From really the first time you see him in this film, it instantly clicks. Like, oh my God, this guy's a bad man. And Henry Fonda plays him incredibly well. I was stunned. When you see him for the first time, it is stunning when you see how good he is as a villain. Okay, so I really had to nitpick for a bad thing to say about this film. And the only thing I could say bad is that the title card is kind of weird. It kind of sucks, actually. It's kind of lame. And really, that's all. That's all I have to say. This film is an amazing movie. I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Great performances. The film is beautiful. The score is beautiful. And the way that the story goes is just fantastic. I love this movie so much. Overall, 4.5 out of 5 stars for Once Upon a Time in the West. An amazing movie if you have not seen it. If you're only slightly interested in Westerns, I would say give this movie a shot. It's amazing. Watch it. All right, let's see what the Letterboxd community thinks about this film. A lot of glowing reviews, so this is not going to surprise a lot of people here. Let's start with Shane Grant. Shane Grant gives it 5 stars, and he says, if Leone's other Westerns are elemental, about dueling masculinity in a fine line between good and bad, this is his true epic about the frontier and colonization of the West. Henry Fonda is a brutal villain, Charles Brosnan is a little mischievous pixie gunslinger, and Claudia Cardinale gives Brigitte Bardot a run for her money. The score is Morricone's most sweeping, finest work. The camera work feels more refined and elevated. Bravissimo. All right, and let's go with Logan. Logan also gives this 5 stars with a heart, and he says, absolute masterpiece. Sergio's best film by a good bit. I think it clears the good, the bad, and the ugly by a mile. I actually agree with that. And I love the good, and the bad, and the ugly, but this film, oh my God, is a whole other thing. Brilliant film and greatest Western. I got to agree with Logan here. I think it might be the best Western out there. So let's get with Marco here. Marco gives it 4.5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Marco says, a close-up by Sergio Leone surely ranks among the greatest moments in cinema history. They are cinematic poetry, turning simple standoffs into timeless, unforgettable scenes. There is one standoff in this film, and it's excellent. Honestly, I think the standoff in Good and the Bad and the Ugly is better, but it's still a very good standoff. And finally, the last review is a little more measured. I don't want to highlight all the glowing reviews. This is David Monks. David Monks gives it 3 stars out of 5, and he says, gorgeous cinematography and framing, my God, yes. Absolutely yes. Just too long. The slow pacing only detracted from an otherwise well-crafted film. The film is slow. I will give David that at least. But I think the slowness of the film is justified by the end and what happens. So, again, that's me. David feels otherwise. But honestly, an amazing movie.
My land. We're here and we're going to stay here. Give me 10 years and I'll have that brand on the gates of the greatest ranch in Texas.
Now let's scan the horizon for our next story. Red River, starring John Wayne, Montgomery Clift, and Joanne Drew, directed by Howard Hawks. It is rated 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 100% fresh, and it was nominated for 2 Oscars, including Best Writing and Best Film Editing. And it's also on the Criterion Collection. And to be honest, I'm not as enthusiastic with Red River as I am the last 2 movies, but it's still a very good film. I think both Clift and Wayne really carry this movie. They're push and pull together with this father-son-like dynamic and this story about usurping someone's authority through mutiny. I just think those 2 guys are the entire movie in this film, and just how they interact with each other is basically the best parts of the movie. But I have to say, some of the scenes are really good to watch. The 2 I'm talking about are the stampede scene and the crossing the river scene. Like, the stampede scene was amazing to watch, and that is something that I would love to read about how they did those scenes, because they are really breathtaking to watch, and it could not have been easy. I would also say the same thing for the crossing the river scene. I got a couple of problems. I think the romance subplot is rushed, much like the other movies I've talked about this week, and that's the one with Clift and Joanne Drew. First off, I don't think Joanne Drew does a really good job in her role. Like, when she gets shot with the arrow, she's like, oh dear. I'm like, you just got shot with an arrow? Hello? Can you show a little more emotion there? And then her falling in love with him right away, and then her trying to interfere with John Wayne when it comes to Clift's character, I think, again, just felt incredibly rushed. And the final thing is, I don't like the ending of this film. It's not satisfying in the slightest. I don't know what exactly I would have wanted out of that, but for it to end with them fighting, and then the woman who just met both of them yelling at them, and then the guys being like, oh yeah, we were kind of jerks, weren't we? Like, what was that? I thought that was a very weird ending. It's just not a satisfying ending for me. But overall, I'm going to give Red River 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think it's a very good film. I think most of the film in the first 2 acts are really good and entertaining to watch. I especially like the look of some of the scenes and how they're shot, especially the stampede scene. If you don't want to watch the movie, watch that scene specifically. It's amazing what it looks like. And I do like Montgomery Clift and John Wayne in the film. I think they carry the movie overall. But the ending's not satisfying, and then there's a romantic subplot that just feels forced. And honestly, it just seems like a lot of Western films have that, but that's just me, at least. So overall, 3.5 out of 5 for Red River. All right, so let's see what the Letterboxd community thinks of this film. Patrick Willems gives it 4 stars, and he says, there are like 500 cattle moving through every shot in this movie, and I got so stressed out imagining what it must have been like to shoot. Oops, John Wayne flew up a line. Move all the cattle back a mile and we'll try it again. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, that must have been incredibly stressful and annoying to deal with throughout the shooting of this film. This next one is from Jake Cole. Jake Cole gives it 5 stars, and he says, Hawk made perhaps the greatest Western of all time a decade later, but damned if this doesn't make an equally strong argument for placement, at least among the genre's pantheon. Old West and New Order pit as classic stardom versus young method acting. Vision of capitalism as murderous tyranny, capable of being bested only by a Hawksian community of men. When both fail, It's up to a woman to set them straight, Natch. Yeah, I mean, if we got to see that female character more, I could be on board with it. But it's like she just came in the last 30 minutes of the film, and I'm supposed to believe that she's capable of convincing both men that she just met of not killing each other. Like, come on. Like, I don't buy that at all. And this last review is from Hergved, I think. Hergved gives it 3.5 stars out of 5, and he says, shouldn't have ended it like that, but the scale of this movie is admirable. And I think that's where I am as well with this film. I do not like the ending at all, but the way that this film is shot and how they did the film was just too good to pass up. And I think just for the scale, I would recommend watching the film. Finally, let's aim our sights on The Quick and the Dead, starring Sharon Stone, Gene Hackman, Russell Crowe, and Leonardo DiCaprio, directed by Sam Raimi. It has a Letterboxd score of 3.4 out of 5 and a Rotten Tomatoes score of 60% fresh. The best way to think of The Quick and the Dead is that it is the anti-Western Western, whereas most Westerns feature a stoic main character and the shots are done in wide-angle vistas, and it highlights the natural setting of the films. The Quick and the Dead uses camera tricks. It uses a bunch of different angles, a lot of Dutch angles. My God, how many Dutch angles were needed in this film? As well as being very dramatic. I would say overly dramatic throughout most of the film. Another point I want to get across is most Westerns want to build up its tension gradually to a crescendo where it ends in a shootout or in a gunfight or something like that. Gunfights and shootouts are actually kind of a rarity in those films. They're either done once or twice in a movie. Whereas in The Quick and the Dead, it's all gunfights. It's all shootouts in this film. And that's where basically all the drama happens. In fact, I would think of The Quick and the Dead as Bloodsport the Western, because the most memorable parts of the film are the shootouts. And all this film really is a bunch of shootouts. Let me make one point. If you do not like Westerns, and if you're still watching this video and you don't like Westerns, thank you. But if you don't like Westerns, I would say this is probably the best Western for you, because it is almost unlike any other Western that is out there. Again, it relies on camera tricks and flash and a lot of dramatization to get its point across, and that is very unlike most other Westerns. In terms of performances, I think Leonardo DiCaprio is the best performance of this film, followed by Gene Hackman, who is really just chewing scenery and is basically his character from Unforgiven turned up to 11. He's clearly having a great time with this character. I didn't really feel much at the end of this film. In fact, I kind of looked at it and went, well, that's competently made and it's got some nice camera tricks, but I literally felt nothing for the characters, nothing for the story. It was basically a popcorn movie Western. And if that's what you're into, if you just want something that just looks cool and is exciting and has like explosions and is fun, and I would probably say The Quick and the Dead would probably be something that you'd be interested in. But if you're like me and you actually enjoy Westerns, you enjoy the Once Upon a Time in the West, you enjoy Stagecoach, stuff like that, this may not be for you. You might actually not enjoy this at all. So my rating for this film is 2.5 stars out of 5. Again, it's the anti-Western Western, and I think for that reason, people who don't like Westerns would probably find a way to enjoy this. So 2.5 stars out of 5 for me for The Quick and the Dead. And let's see what the Letterboxd community thinks about this film. This is Josh Barton. Josh gives it 4 stars out of 5 with a heart, and he says, Sam Raimi's Western, The Quick and the Dead, is so gleefully over the top, it's impossible not to watch it with a huge smile on your face. It may run a little slim on the narrative side of things, but when it's this well acted, my word, what a cast, and this well shot, close-ups of eyes aplenty, that can be excused. In fact, this is all about that entertainment factor, and Raimi delivers it in spades. This film is incredibly slim with narrative, I will agree with him on that. Define well shot. If you like it to be flashy, then yes, it is very well shot. But I seem to definitely prefer my Westerns to be more on the stoic, more on the classical side. But if you are into something more flashy, Josh is right, this film does deliver that. Let's get into our second review. This is Darren R., who gives it 3.5 stars out of 5. Oh, give me a home where gunslingers roam, where the zooms and the pans are insane, where the angles are Dutch and the gunshots wound much, and Hackman chews scenery again. Yeah, I'm sorry if my singing is terrible, but yeah, that's essentially what the film is. Good on you, Darren. That was actually a good one. I'll give him that. Let's go for the third one. We have Johnny Andrews. Johnny gives it 3 stars out of 5, and he says, if you try and forget how smoking hot Sharon Stone is and how out of place she looks with her perfect white teeth and bronze body, this is a fun ride. Raimi goes overboard with the Dutch angles and crazy zooms, but it all makes for a great watch. A fantastic cast and a brilliantly conceived premise. Not my favorite by Raimi, but a terrific play on the dusty old Western. Yeah, that is weird, how Sharon Stone is clearly the most beautiful person there, and everyone has false teeth, gold teeth, cracked teeth, are dirty, and stuff like that. So yeah, I kind of forgot about that. But yeah, it doesn't really matter if you really enjoy the film. And finally, let's have this review from Ben's Movie Lens. Ben's gives it 2.5 stars out of 5. And Ben says, one of the most basic and predictable movies I've ever seen. Every single duel was so easy to predict who was going to win, and therefore there was absolutely no tension at all. I agree with that 100%. There wasn't really any memorable characters, but I did enjoy the cast with Leonardo DiCaprio and Russell Crowe being the main standouts. You know, Russell Crowe wasn't bad in this film. I'll give him that. Westerns are one of my favorite genres, though, and the settings and costumes will always be something I love. The music was good as well, and it was well paced, with the film going by quite fast. Some of the style presented by Sam Raimi was strange and didn't work, but there were times when it certainly did. Overall, The Quick and the Dead was a bit of a disappointment, and the story and characters were very bland, and it's not something I'd recommend, as there are loads of better westerns out there. Yes, I definitely agree with Ben's there on a lot of this. There are a lot of better westerns out there to watch, especially in the past, or even later on as well. I'll note some later, but I definitely agree with him. Also, yes, this film is incredibly predictable. So, if you want to be surprised, this movie ain't it, Chief. Well, I'm about to ride off into the sunset, but before I go, let me ask you a question. What is your favorite Western story? For me, before I watched Once Upon a Time in the West, which I think might just be my favorite, it's the remake of True Grit by the Coen brothers. But others I love are The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which I reviewed last year, Stagecoach, The Searchers, and Unforgiven. I have to also say one of my favorites is Kevin Costner's Open Range. I watched that randomly in theaters when it was released, and I absolutely love the film. You can mosey on down and follow me on Letterboxd and X at WatchRateHeart. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and share with your friends. I'm Brad from WatchRateHeart. Thank you for watching, and remember, we all watch and rate movies, but you give them the heart that makes them live forever.